Benji, 16 World Tour wins, including 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 World Tour stage races, one of which was the Giro d'Italia, but no World Tour wins after the middle of June when Carapaz won Tour de Suisse, Tour de France podium third, and then a smattering of quite good performances in monuments, Moscon and Yates third in Lombardia. Where would you rate this season for INEOS? Because even though it looks really good compared to a lot of the other teams we've done, I still think it's a bit disappointing.
I think it's very hard to rate INEOS because we don't know what their thoughts behind the scenes are. For example, in the past, they were the all-encompassing team for the Tour de France. If you come from that level, you're going to be disappointed with everything that's not winning the Tour de France from that point onwards. Now, we know that with the rise of Pogacar and Roglic, that it's less likely that they take that Tour de France as displayed in the last 2 years. And perhaps their view on what their most important races are, or if they need to win the Tour de France to be successful, has changed in the last 2 years. That's something we don't know. But in all honesty, if you win the Giro d'Italia, that's pretty crazy. And if you do it by, I think, winning 3 stages along the way, right? Yes, Bernal, and Filippo Ganna with the initial time trial and the last time trial, 4 stages. So that's good for the Giro for certain. That's a top Giro for a team, and they take that. Now, the rest of the races, they've got Pidcock bringing up Brabantse-Pijl, in our hearts also winning Amstel Gold Race. And with the rest of the season, every time a Slovenian popped up, that's where they ended up doing worse than they probably hoped for. The Tour de France, for example, the Vuelta a España. And I think those are still very important races for a team like this. So I'd rate it at, it's a good season, but it's not amazing like in the past.
I don't think they're any closer to figuring out how to beat Pogacar or Roglic. Tirreno Adriatico, UAE Tour, Basque Country, the tour that Benji mentioned, and the Vuelta a España, they came up short. Not just in terms of, okay, good tactics, but then the what's didn't work, but also, you know, you looked at Velefique in the Vuelta and other stages, they're just not sure they really are any closer to figuring out how to do that. And yeah, as Benji said, Swiss and other races, it's not like Tirreno level. Tirreno maybe the most competitive 1 week this year. That being said, it's all through the lens through which you look at this season. If you look at it, 50 million euro budget, if you don't win the tour, it's a boom or, you know, it's a bust season. Yeah. It's going to be disappointing. If you look at it as a rebuilding year for INEOS, which I kind of think they're in the middle of a transition, I think it's incredibly encouraging when you think of the riders that have. Pidcock was better than I even thought in one-day races. Carlos Rodriguez is starting to look good, and Ganna was still obviously Ganna world champ. They got to get credit, at least like he's on their equipment.
Ethan
and Ethan Hayter as well, like unbelievably good, looking like a sort of mini Wout van Aert at the moment. And yeah, he was incredibly good. And the question mark for him is how he'll go on in the mountains, because he had a very select schedule, but still, like, how many races did he win this year, Ethan Hayter? Of course, none at World Tour level, but he won 9 races, including British national champs ITT in 2021.
In all honesty, I think the biggest question is not how it will go in the mountains for him.
Oh, really?
I feel like right now what he can do is already so versatile across many disciplines that I'd rather see him do what he does on the .pro level already on World Tour. It doesn't need to be in the climbing yet. I just want to see him do hilly finishes. I want to see him do those kind of races first. Sure, it can end up being that he's also great in the mountains along the way, but kind of like when Wout van Aert joined the sport, he didn't start off by doing the mountains. He started off by doing the stuff he knew. And in World Tour, he did the same. And then he gradually fell into the mountain, being decent at it as well. So I think Ethan Hayter is great at those hilly finishes. He's great at basically all those kind of races. He's shown the promise that he can climb, but we haven't seen the initial part yet in World Tour, so I'd rather see that first before we see the climbing in World Tour.
Another positive is Egan Bernal had the back injuries last year. We were like, oh, you know, you never know how this might affect him. Pino's not come back from his back injury in the Tour 2020. Bernal won the Giro, so that's encouraging for them. And I think his TT was really good at the Vuelta in the last stage as well. What about Benji? How would you evaluate the Adam Yates move, who came across from Mitchelton Scott in 2020, third at Lombardia, good in the Italian one days, no surprise there. Kind of through third in the Vuelta. I went and looked at the data again on that last stage 20. Very odd the way he rode that. Won Catalunya, fourth at Basque, second, very strong at UAE, very, very good. Just the TT cost him against Pog. And yeah, just all around quite a good season.
Yeah, I agree. It's a pretty good season, and you see that from the start of the season that he's one of the better 1 week races. We've said it enough of the entire peloton, and I wonder about his 2022 schedule, where we'll send him in a bit, but we'll talk about that in a second. But based on 2021, he is doing great in a Grand Tour that has limited time trial kilometers, to be honest. And in the last time trial, his time trial was kind of worse than I expected.
Yeah, it was. And I think what happened was he tried to do a Pogacar Planche de Belfi and go out hard and freak out Haig by, having a crazy T1. And that didn't happen. I spoke to Haig about it. Haig was like, yeah, I knew he'd do that. And I just knew if I did my power, then 30 seconds too much. I think the mistake was made by Yates on the stage before. But speaking of some other riders that have been on INEOS for longer than the Pidcocks and Yates of this world, Geoghegan Hart, I'm giving a bit of a pass. I think that Paris-Nice concussion, or he hit his head quite hard in a crash in Paris-Nice, I think that sort of thing can affect the rest of your season. I'm interested to see. He had flashes of the Dauphiné, but obviously he did not show anything near his level in the Giro of 2020 when he won. So that's a big question mark there. Otherwise, Benji Kwiatkowski, I think he just took another step. Just how Sagan just lost 0.5% gradually each year. I think that's happening with Kwiatkowski at the moment. And I think clearly Pidcock and Hayter are the men in one days, and he should work for them.
I agree, although it depends on the races, because we're talking about classics, then I would definitely say Pidcock is the man. But if you look at an MSR, I would dare to say I'd put Ethan Hayter as a free element next to it, because I believe that he can get far in that race as well,
Other riders, Danny Martinez, great in the Giro, then got COVID, and I think that sort of affected the rest of his season. And Burgos, even there, he started in Burgos in August and San Sebastian, he just wasn't right. So he's another question mark. Hope he comes back okay. Dylan Van Baarle was probably their best cobbled rider. Or he won Dwars of Vlaanderen in a solo. He was good. Thomas kept crashing. He crashed this is Geraint Thomas' season. It's so hard to know what his level is, whether he's the same as 2018, 2019. He crashed in Romandy, which wasn't too bad. He crashed in the Dauphiné. Tour de France crashed and took out Geesink. Olympics crashed. And then that was his season pretty much done. Got sent to Benelux. I remember listening to his podcast. He didn't sound too enthused about being sent to Benelux tour. So I have no idea. His level was fine. I think on long, steady climbs to altitude in cold conditions, he's still really, really good. TT though, Benji, that was the mixed bag that was weird. Not weird, just Imola great, but that Dauphiné TT was not good.
Yeah, but I think that Dauphiné TT was kind of a special one where everyone except for Astana just miscalculated the gradients on that final uphill section. And they all kind of imploded on the last section. So I wouldn't see that time trial as the indicator for everybody, really. So I'd see that as an exception more than the standard, even for Thomas here.
We've got two other young riders who are big touted signings. So De Plus, I think he's coming back this year, but he was injured or sick or took some time off the bike as well. Big question marks over him. I presume he got a pretty big contract coming over from Jumbo after that 2019 TDF. Sivakov, though, did come back and look good in the Welter. So he's looking good, but still definitely hasn't shown his Route d'Occitanie sort of crazy power as of last year.